Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our fourth day here at the Nordic Pavilion COP27. And welcome also to the audience that follow us online. Every morning at the Nordic Pavilion, we'll take a closer look at the future. How we build, eat, cook, invest, and live, where we to meet the 1.5 degree target. What changes needed to be made and how will they impact our everyday lives? The future starts with the decision we make today. So how do we improve women and children's health by decreasing exposure to black carbon, reduce carbon emissions, prevent deforestation, and promote gender equality by empowering women? Multiple issues, as you can hear, but with one simple solution. It's called clean cooking. Over 4 million people, over 4 billion people globally, and almost 900 million people in the Sub-Saharan African countries lack access to modern cooking facilities. With me to shine light on these problems, solutions, and potential is Sophie Odupoy, Group Head of Public Affairs, KOKO Networks. Welcome. And we also have Ash Sharma, Vice President at Nefco and Head of Modern Cooking Facility for Africa. And Mattias Frumerie, Swedish Head of Delegation to the UNFCCC. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to start with Sophie Odupoy. I would like to start by asking, what kind of network is the KOKO Networks?
Much for that question. KOKO Networks, we call ourselves technology platforms, and our mission is to protect Africa's tropical forests. And the way we do this is we build renewable fuel utilities that enable the transition from charcoal. As you said, a lot of people use charcoal and firewood as the option for their cooking fuel. It's dirty. Unfortunately, they have no choice. So for us, what we've done is we have developed a model that enables bioethanol as the clean and renewable cooking fuel. And how do we do this? We realized it is not possible to deliver bioethanol affordably for as long as it's bottled. So it was critical to remove the additional costs along the value chain so that the people who are using charcoal and firewood are able to get it affordably. And that is where technology comes in. So for us, we bring together four main elements. We bring together technology, which is ours, infrastructure, where we've worked with people who are conversant with the logistics around liquid fuel, and predominantly these are in the fossil fuel. So we've partnered with Vivo, and we make use of their existing infrastructure to transport the fuel. We then bring on board capital, and this is primarily family and corporate, such as Microsoft Climate Innovation Fund. And fourthly is policy. It's critical for government to be on board because we are talking about the masses. So for us, we've brought these four together, and we are able to deliver a two-burner cooker that uses bioethanol. And the mode of them refueling is we give them a reusable canister. So that way they do not have to use a disposable bottle that they fill and throw away.
And help us understand also the multiple problems that is caused by the lack of modern cooking facilities in rural African households.
When you think about rural African households, most of them cook using firewood. Increasingly, there are fewer and fewer trees because we have cut down the trees and we have not been planting. So what is happening, they're having to go further and further away, risking their lives. And most of this is undertaken. The mothers ask the young girls to go and collect the firewood, thus exposing them to risks of sexual harassment. They could be attacked along the way by animals, and essentially it's time away from productive use of their time in addition to going to school. So the further away they go, the longer they take, the higher the risks they face. So when we talk about a solution like ours, it would mean they stay at home, yeah? And in cooking, they're not exposed to carbon emissions. Then the risks to their health are essentially taken away. So they stay at home or they go to school, and the mother
keep your mouth or your microphone close.
okay, and the mother gets to have time to do productive work if it's about farming or essentially bringing additional income to the home. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Sharma, the aim of the Nefco managed Modern Cooking Facility for Africa program is to provide 3 million Africans with the access to clean cooking solutions. How do you go about that?
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the question. We at Nefco, we're a Nordic institution, and we've been working, looking to work with clean cooking for many years in the carbon market, and we have done so with some success, but we see that there is a lot further we can go on clean cooking, and we were very pleased when our colleagues at Sweden asked us to look at clean cooking in a more holistic way. And together with SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, we established the Modern Cooking Facility for Africa. And this is an instrument which is looking to support higher tier access for clean cooking. So by higher tier, I mean moving away from traditional biofuels, charcoal, and other polluting substances. And the example I'd like to give is that when we talk about clean cooking, it's the smoking analogy. You know, we know that some people smoke 40 cigarettes a day. We don't want them to smoke 20. We want to stop them smoking, right? And I think the idea here really is to have an instrument which supports private sector businesses, companies like KOKO and others, which are looking to establish sustainable businesses in the clean cooking space. And that's really where we want to be.
Mattias Frumerie, you are head of the Swedish delegation to the UNFCCC, and you are as close to the negotiation as is possible to get. So, this is what we're hearing about here is real world problems. How does what's going on here reflect what's going on around the negotiation table? Are you taking all these problems into the negotiations?
I was saying that hopefully we're not bringing sort of the problems into the negotiations, but rather the solutions, which we've just heard. And I think that, though, I mean, I'm so happy to be here a bit on behalf of SIDA colleagues who are, as Ash said, partnering with Nefco to develop these kind of solutions. And I think the examples which Sophie provided is really examples which we might need to hear more of also in the negotiations themselves, and see what kind of possibilities there are out there in order for countries to sort of to bring forward and advance in climate action. And of course, I mean, as your title for this morning's conversation is, these are multiple issues and one solution. So there's not only a climate issue here. I mean, as we heard, it's gender, it's health, children going to school, and eventually, you know, in the long term, that's also providing for jobs and growth in individual countries. So I think the kind of solutions which are offered by what we're hearing here is really something we need to hear more about in the negotiations as well.
Ash, I mean, the thing here is private sector. That's a key word. So how do we support market development to scale up high technology, clean cooking solutions provided by private actors? How do you kind of take care of the whole value chain here?
No, good question. I think that what we are trying to do really is just to support companies to de-risk their market expansion. So particularly when you look at companies which are successful at early stage, we want to help them to scale up. We want them to leverage more funding, and by providing results-based financing, we can actually support them in doing so. The analogy here is really like a power purchase agreement, you know, where you provide a bankable contract which will help them to raise more funding. And we want these companies to expand and to serve more rural customers. But we also see that there are certain challenges, and the key issue, the elephant in the room with these discussions is always affordability. You know, when you work in rural areas, you're really working with people who have very limited incomes. They're very reliant on agriculture, And of course, as we've seen in many parts of Africa, this is quite a perilous existence sometimes, especially when you have droughts, failures, other climate impacts. So what we want to do is to support business models which can go beyond that. So, for example, consumer financing, PayGo, which is very well established in the electricity sector, but we haven't seen transfer yet into, in a whole-scale way, into the clean cooking space.
Sophie, hearing what Ash said now, I mean, what do you need more of, so to say, to transform the current clean cooking ecosystem?
Just repeat the question.
I was wondering what is needed to transform the current clean cooking ecosystem, in your perspective?
For me, the biggest game changer would be government, and specifically policy. We find a lot of governments have not yet grasped what is required to transform and implement clean cooking solutions. So a lot of the time they do not provide a framework that is conducive to investors to come in and invest specifically in that country. So we find the fiscal and regulatory environments are still they're still supportive of old solutions, and they're not cognizant of the fact that solutions are moving to different platforms like ours in terms of technology. So they do need to adapt and move very fast. So we are working closely with governments across various countries to try and get this done. Another area, and that Ash alluded to, is about affordability. So for us, we enable our solution to be affordable using carbon credits. Now, that is an even newer area for governments. The challenge with when governments hear there's an additional or a new source of revenue, the immediate reaction is to tax. Yeah? So we are finding a lot of governments jumping on the bandwagon and putting in place taxes on carbon revenue, which essentially limits or disables a lot of companies like ours, because our business model is reliant on us retaining the carbon credits and not being heavily taxed. So it's critical for governments to come to the table, negotiate with private sector players, with investors, for us to find a win-win solution rather than for it to be immediately a win-lose for investors. Thank you.
Here in the Nordics, we take well-functioning governments as clarity. I mean, it's self-evident to us. But then I want to ask you, does it mean anything that there is a Nordic finance institution, and Sweden as well, doing this program? Or could it be anyone? Do we bring anything to the table except the money?
I think the different players bring different abilities and different skills to the table. So it's critical for us to be willing to listen to everyone. You cannot throw anyone away because we don't know what they can bring to the table. If you think about like the solution that was brought by KOKO Networks, it's radical, it's disruptive, it's proven to scale, but it took a lot of people supporting. It was not only us providing the technology, we did have other players coming and supporting us. Not only a lot of heavy lifting at the beginning was financial requirement just to prove the model works. But since then, that is why we require supporters like Ash is saying. So we need other players around the table for us to be able to scale not only within the country where we launched it, but also into additional countries. So we say everyone is welcome. Let us bring whatever it is we have to the table and let us evaluate it. Yeah, thank you.
Mattias, bad cooking facilities disproportionately affects women and children, and Sweden has for a long time now been a front runner when it comes to gender equality. You are perhaps the only country that has stated that your foreign policy is feministic. To what extent do you bring this approach into the negotiations room and the solutions needed for the necessary change? Is that something you think of from the Swedish side?
Definitely. I mean, we have sort of, I mean, and in the same way that we aim to integrate climate action throughout our policy and sort of our development finance, we integrate gender also into our climate work. So for us, definitely, it's sort of, it goes hand in hand. and sort of both within the negotiations themselves, ensuring that we have a strong gender perspective in the outcomes, and also in the delegation to see that we have equal representation within the delegation. And for example, when we participate in various types of panels and so forth, to ensure that there is a sort of an equal representation. So definitely there is a very strong gender perspective also when it comes to climate action. And could I maybe just pick up on one of the points which Sophie made as well in terms of the importance of policy. And I'm very happy that came up, because from our perspective, just looking at how we frame what we call our climate diplomacy, when we engage with countries in supporting them in to become sort of even more ambitious. I mean, its policy is a key element in that. So for us, it's policy, finance, and innovative technology. And by sort of combining these three elements, we believe that countries are being sort of enabled and empowered to be even more ambitious when it comes to climate action. So securing the right kind of policy environment, which in turn will hopefully then attract the kind of investments needed, both domestic and international, and then of course also providing the kind of innovative solutions which are needed. I mean, we have also the Business Sweden Pavilion here with a number of Swedish companies offering these kind of solutions to facilitate the transition to net zero. So I think that's sort of just wanted to underline also the policy element in the transition to net zero. Thanks.
Thank you. Ash, Modern Cooking Facility for Africa is a relatively new program that has recently started, but some days ago you told me that this topic would be even more exciting to talk about at COP28 in Dubai. Why is that?
Well, I think that as Sophie mentioned, carbon finance can play a very strong role in the business models that companies employ, because the cleaner cooking solutions, particularly the higher end ones, generate a lot of carbon savings compared to the baseline. And when we look at the deforestation aspects as well, and then all the other aspects that are related to that, for example, biodiversity loss and so forth, we can see that there are a lot of sustainable development benefits that can accrue from this. But foremost of those is the emission reduction. Given that we're in a climate conference, I think that's very key to consider. And the reason why I mention that, in my own humble opinion, is that I feel that particularly with the Article 6, it's moving, things are really progressing, but I think the whole-scale market, the sort of 6.4 market, is a couple of years down the road. And I think where we would like to see progress, really, of course, it's got to run in two tracks. We'd love to see progress on 6.2, so the bilateral agreements. And again, Sweden is leading the pack here. We see that there are some very, very interesting programs that are being initiated. I think we'll hear more about those at this COP. And for that reason, I feel that the global carbon market, the 6.4 market, is maybe a few years down the road. But things are progressing well.
Also promise me some numbers next year.
Yeah. The numbers I promised relate to the projects where the businesses we're supporting. So this year we've been very active in originating and developing contacts with companies, and I hope that this time next year we can talk about some of the people that we're supporting, as well as the companies. So the companies will be reaching out to beneficiaries in 6 African countries, and we hope we can talk about some real outcomes this time next year.
Sophie, I know you have to leave. You're looking at your watch, but let me just round this off with a statement from you, because I was wondering, where do you see this program going in the coming years?
Thank you for that question. We've identified that the countries that face the problem of deforestation at a very high level, we've determined that there are 60 of them. So essentially across those 60 countries, we have 300 million households that are in need of a clean and renewable solution. Our ambition is to roll out. Next year, we are rolling out to our second country, which is Rwanda. And part of the reason we are around is to engage with governments. As I said, it's critical for us to align with them in terms of their policy and for us to then sign an investment agreement. So our approach is to engage as many governments that are in need of this solution as possible so that we can already start thinking about how do we invest, how do we roll it out, how do we bring on board other partners. Because I've repeatedly said this, 2030 is not very far. The Earth has stopped waiting for us. It's gone far ahead. So unless we accelerate our efforts, the Earth will find us still waiting, still talking, still discussing about the best solution. So for us, we are seeking to partner and accelerate, and as many countries as are willing to come on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie Odupoy, and thank you, Mattias Frumerie and Sharma. Our time is up, but stay tuned. There will be more exciting events coming up the rest of the day here at the Nordic Pavilion. Thank you, everybody, and give them a hand.